Welcome back. It is day 72 of our 90-day New Testament reading plan with New Life Youth. My name is Christian. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's reading is Hebrews 12 through 13, and so we close out the book of Hebrews today. So chapter 12 starts out with the word therefore. We see, let's just read it here for you today. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." We see that word therefore. So of course we have to refer to what was said previously, and that was Hebrews 11, the faith chapter, or what we call sometimes the hall of faith. So as we read through this idea of these cloud of witnesses, think back to chapter 11 where we see this hall of faith, because chapter 11 took us through this long list of names and individuals in Israel's history who not only displayed great faith, but also showed great perseverance in the midst of struggles, suffering, hardship, persecution, and more. And now this author of Hebrews is telling this group of Jewish Christians that there's this great cloud of witnesses that you are surrounded by. This is actually an imagery of like an athletic contest in a great amphitheater. But these witnesses here that the author is referring to are not just spectators. They are witnesses who are inspiring examples to these believers. I don't know if you recall back to one of our earlier videos from the book of Acts, but this word witnesses is the origin of the English word martyr. It was martus was the Greek word, and it means testifiers or witnesses, and where martyr comes from. So these witnesses are the ones who have gone before, and they bear the testimony to the power of faith and God's faithfulness. So they know where these others have stood, and they are witnesses in that sense. So knowing that these individuals have persevered should really give the recipients of this letter such encouragement, knowing that they have persevered, and also to us as well. We should see encouragement from that as well. We need that encouragement because we need to persevere and throw off any sin that hinders us, of course, as well as any other thing that hinders us as we run the race of faith. But what is this specific sin that this author is speaking to that hinders us? Because yes, all sin is a hindrance for us, and so we should avoid sin at all costs. But for this group, this seems to be some particular issue that they're dealing with, or the author is speaking towards, because when we would see Paul write letters, he would very deliberately call out sin, right? And so there must be something here, and I think we get an indication of it really in Hebrews 12 verse 4. It says this, it says, "In your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding your blood." You have not resisted to the point of shedding your blood. Some of these individuals were facing persecution. Some of them were watching others be persecuted, who were being persecuted for these new beliefs in Jesus, for being Christians. There was this strong temptation to avoid persecution and to turn back to their old ways of Judaism. You see, something we don't understand as we're reading through these letters is under the old ways, they weren't being persecuted. Under Judaism, they weren't persecuted. They were free to worship in that way. Judaism was tolerated and legal under the Roman Empire, but Christianity did not have that same protection. Christianity was not protected until 312 AD. So it was for quite some time that Christians and new believers were protected, and so they were being persecuted amidst all of this time, and that was a serious hardship. So there are these new Christians who have this strong temptation to leave the faith and just go back to Judaism because they didn't want to be persecuted. So the sin that the author of Hebrews seems to be referring to, it's not explicit, but he seems to be referring to this sin of abandoning their faith for more comfortable religion, for letting go of their faith in Jesus, that would be the sin that would entangle them. Now, of course, other sin can entangle us and hold us back like 100%. But this idea in Hebrews seems to be more tied to leaving the faith due to the persecution. Hence the reason why there is such an emphasis here on perseverance. With perseverance, the author is helping them to understand and change the narrative as well of hardship and persecution. So they need to stop with the sin of leaving the faith to avoid persecution, and they need to embrace perseverance and even to a degree embrace hardship and persecution. They are changing a narrative here because these hardships, what they do is they discipline us. That's what hardships do. They discipline us. A lot of times when we think about discipline, I think too often what our minds do is we go right to this negative idea regarding discipline, that we are being disciplined for something we've done wrong, like course correction. But in Scripture, discipline is much broader than simple course correction. Yes, I think like sometimes there is discipline in our lives for consequences. Like anytime there's a natural consequence, those consequences are a discipline for us to a degree. Like I mess up, like I drive drunk, get pulled over and have to go to jail. Yeah, that is a natural consequence and discipline for me, right? That is an obvious natural consequence and discipline. But even more than that, discipline, it goes beyond just consequence and being put in timeout, right? Discipline is really more about shaping and developing us, is really what discipline is used for. Think of it like this, like a coach is going to put you through rigorous training to test your limits, right? But not just because they want to test your limits, but they want you to grow. They want you to grow in strength. And once you've tested those limits, you grow beyond those limits, and then you continue to test them. It's building discipline. A teacher will test your knowledge and push you in regards to assignment to help you to grow, to learn outside, to expand your thinking. But it's not to punish you. It's to help you grow. Even as a parent, sometimes we have to allow our children to struggle through something so that they can learn resilience. I don't know if you've ever been one of those kids that's just every time a problem comes up, their parents fix it for them, or someone hands them, just everything's handed to them on a silver platter. Those kids grow up to be soft adults and soft individuals. And at the first sign of hardship, they throw in the towel, they give up because they're so used to everything being handed to them. Like, discipline is so necessary for our growth. And biblical discipline, it goes so much further than correction. Biblical discipline is for shaping us and developing us into who we are called to be. And so God is going to use all kinds of trials and hardships to shape us and to grow us. And often we need to actually lean into and persevere through that hardship and not shy away from it like the temptation to do. For me, like, I look back on moments of hardship in my life and things that were a struggle at the time. Some of them were a real struggle. And now when I face either similar moments or I see that I'm walking through other hardship, I face it very differently now. Not that it's not still difficult, like it is still difficult to walk through hardship, but I don't carry as much of a burden now as I used to. I've walked through hardship before, and now my viewpoint is, okay, God, I'm trusting you through it and I'm walking through it. It's almost like this. My first year in college, I felt so incredibly busy with everything. Like I could hardly keep up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I've never been this busy before. This schedule is crazy. I'm having a hard time keeping up with all my schoolwork and extra responsibilities. And then my second year, I come back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had so much time last year. Like, what was I doing with my time? I was wasting all this time, and now I'm busier than ever before. And then my third year, same story. I looked back on my first year, I was like, what was I doing? Like, just joking around and messing around the whole time. And now I'm just unbelievably, and it just was this growth period for me where I realized like I was being refined and that my perspective was changing. My perspective of difficulty was changing, not even just hardship, but just this idea of busyness and being stretched and growing and learning and understanding responsibility and being disciplined in that and learning discipline in that. The reality is, yes, every more I did have more on my plate, but at the same time, I look back now, I'm like, man, what a joke. Like I had so much time on my hands, but I was being tested, I was being refined, and that helped me for my future and the things that God was preparing me for as well. And so like the author says, I think when it comes to discipline seems painful at the time, but later it produces a harvest, right? Later it's going to produce a harvest. And so we don't shrink back and we don't go back to the old ways. And so like this author is telling this group of Jewish Christians, don't shrink back, persevere, discipline is good for us. Just because we're facing persecution and hardship does not mean that we abandon our faith, but we continue to persevere. So chapter 12 then really continues for the rest of the chapter with a series of encouragement and staying the course. And then chapter 13, this author closes out, but it's really just a lot of practical advice for our lives, practical advice for this group that he is writing to. But really, I think that covers most of Hebrews for us. That covers all of Hebrews. We're done with Hebrews, I should say. And so tomorrow we start into the book of James, which is a short but a very rich and full letter. So we're looking forward to that. But until then, as always, let us know, what are you learning as you're reading through the book of Hebrews. Let us know what you're learning. You can let us know here on YouTube. Let us know in the YouVersion Bible plan. And as always, we hope to see you tomorrow.